Hi, hey, hello. If you're new here, my name is Rain. If you're not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you stopping on by to my little corner of the internet. Per a correspondence with Frog, most likely the only person down below. Hi, Frog. You're always there, Frog. Hi, Frog. We were discussing fish, aquatic takes on my plant zombie people. How would they exist in an aquatic ecosystem? And I was like, I literally can't draw fish because I can't draw fish. I don't know how to draw fish. And so that's what this video is about. Me trying to learn how to draw something that I don't know how to draw, which is fish. I don't really know how to draw any animals. The last time I drew a fish was in 9th grade biology. The fish was in front of me, and I was very upset about it because I don't do dead things. And so it was definitely not a good fish drawing. I don't even think I could find that drawing if my life depended on it. I will be looking though, so that if you do see a fish drawing on screen right now, that's my 9th grade biology drawing. It's very unlikely that it is on screen right now. I don't think I'll be able to find it. But so what I did is I pulled up a bunch of references of fish, and I just found a few that I thought were really interesting and worked on getting the basic outline of fish down for me. So if you have the interest in being creative during this video, drawing alongside me per usual, I would love to see it if you're comfortable sharing. Tag me. If you send it on Instagram, you will go to my message request. And if I don't see it within the first couple of days since this happened to Frog, feel free to comment here and say, hey, I messaged you on Instagram, because I don't get notified when I get message requests, and Instagram is really weird about telling me if I have any. So it took me days to get to Frog. Sorry, Frog. But last but not least, if you have time to watch all the way through to the end of this video, I would really appreciate it. I actually, for how bad I am at drawing fish in this video on a technical level, I am really happy with how cute and dorky my fish turn out and how the spread ends up. So if you have time to stick around, I would really appreciate it. With that being said, let's get into the fish discussion. If you hear any weird noises, per usual, I have cats and dogs, so you might be hearing them throughout the course of this. You're gonna have to not mind them. I don't know what came over me when it came to deciding to draw fish that said that a kind of straight on view of a fish would be an easier option. The reference I had, the fish was kind of front on, but their back bit, their tail bit, was kind of curving away. And so for some reason I thought that that would be easier because it has that kind of frontal oval shape to the fish that is a nice basic shape that I could work with. I don't have to account for the elongation of their body. Then I just have to interpret their fins. And so I was under the impression that it would be kind of an easier approach to trying to learn how to draw fish. I would just start with something kind of dead center straight on. Turns out that that is very difficult, and I don't know how to draw the foreshortening of fish bodies. Because unlike humans and mammals, like, they don't have necks. And I didn't account for how hard it is to draw something that doesn't have a neck. But because there's no distinguishing part of the body, like a cat neck or a human neck, that leads into the shoulders, which lead into the rest of the body, fish just have more shape to them. They're just a blob defined by some weird bones inside of them, right? And so the fish that I was referencing's face was like right there, dead center, but there was a bit to the body, like a curve to the stomach region of the fish that extended well beyond the face. Like, it existed backwards. I don't know how to explain it. There's the face, and that's what's in the front, right? And then their midsection, their stomach dips below their face, similar to how, like, the shoulders and the chest is like below the neck, right? It dips down, and I didn't know how to, and I still don't really know how to transition from a fish face to a fish stomach region from a frontal view, because the face doesn't have anything separating it from the rest of the body. It's just all one solid object. There aren't joints in there that are kind of distinguishing the head to the torso to the back fins, which I guess would be like the human equivalent of legs, right? And that was something that just absolutely ruined me. Conceptually, I could not for the life of me figure out how to translate what I was looking at from a frontal perspective with a fish reference. The two that I had before the video even started were just jokey blobs that I made for like a cute fish, no reference. And so I didn't have to think about anything. It's straight out of the imagination, right? Now, actually looking at it, I have to think about the actual structure of this animal and take it into consideration. That was something that was very hard for me. So the next fish I went to was a beta. They have a pretty simple, basic oval shape, a bit of a frontal nose bit thing going on, but they're a basic oval, so that's not a lot. And then their fins account for a lot of their body. Now, the beta that I was looking at, its fins, that accessory bit, kind of presented like the scales of the torso were merging into it. It was not super well distinguished between the body and the fins, and so that's why I chose it as my second option, because I felt like it gave a lot more leeway to me being able to conceptualize the difference between the body and the fins, right? I was able to make mistakes in where they went from one to the other because it wasn't such a hard distinguished line, and I felt like it would still come out looking kind of okay. So it felt like a good learning step. My first fish reference was maybe a bit too ambitious for what I was trying to do and kind of my level of experience. A beta felt very, very simple and like something that I could make a mistake on and it would still be okay. And when it comes to the eyeballs of fish, I'm not pursuing 100% accuracy, anatomical accuracy. I am stylizing the eyes a little bit and taking my own personal liberties with the kind of weird eye bags that I'm drawing, the basic pupil, and the general shape. I'm not planning to do scientific fish illustrations, right? I'm thinking about these fish and learning to draw fish well anatomically accurate body-wise for the sake of an illustration, right? For the sake of knowing enough to be able to incorporate it in my character drawings and character designs. And so I'm not going to be super hard on myself about pursuing perfection in terms of my representation. Just enough that it feels like I know what a fish looks like, my world feels accurate enough, and I need them to look like they exist within the reality that I've created, right? And generally I don't condone this kind of philosophy, this draw everything right out the gate in your own style. Generally I do try to encourage at least one or two realism approaches just for the sake of knowing exactly what you're getting rid of when you stylize something. I don't know why I just threw that kind of away. I guess because fish are something that anatomically do have a lot more liberties to them than something like a four-legged creature where you kind of need to account for proportions more, if that makes sense. Like when you're drawing a mammal, and we'll go with a four-legged mammal like a cat or a dog, you need to kind of conceptualize how does the head lead into the shoulders to the rest of the body, and you need to have enough of an understanding of like the leg length and how that relates to like supporting the body. Fish don't have these separate bits to them that they kind of require to be proportional. So many of the fish that I was drawing generally are two things attached to each other, and getting that proportion down was a lot easier than something like a dog or a cat for me. And so I didn't feel too limited by not doing complete realism studies, pardon the emails. And I do kind of want to go and do some skeletal studies of fish on my own time. Unless you guys are interested in seeing it, I would be happy to share skeleton studies of fish. Wow. I would be happy to do skeletal studies of fish and show you guys on my channel and do it in a more kind of ink illustration way. That's something that I'm very passionate about, and that's how I do my scientific illustrations. So I would be really interested to do kind of like little postcard sized drawings on my channel if you guys are interested in seeing me actually like try and take an anatomical and serious approach to learning to draw fish. I would be super into that. But that's something that like I would want you guys to tell me you're interested in, because this will be more of a study thing for me rather than something that I'm dedicating a particular objective to. This is for a broader illustration, a broader universe I've created, right? That's what my plant zombie people are, right? They're a broader existence in this world that I've created. Whereas if I'm doing kind of a scientific illustration approach, that's something I'm creating as a standalone drawing, right? That's something I'm creating to exist as itself, and it's usually a study. And so let me know for sure. I don't think that my scientific illustrations for flowers are the most well-loved videos I have published, although I think my videos haven't been doing to 100% anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter. It's hard to tell. I don't know how to read the algorithm and like views per subscriber ratio, so I don't know. So let me know if you're interested. I'd be happy to make it. I love creating content that you guys want to see, you know? And I'm going to do it anyway, because I believe that by pushing myself out of my boundaries and out of what I'm most familiar with, that is how I will improve the most as an artist, right? The more that I push myself to do something greater and do something more expansive with my work, the more effectively that I can create and kind of communicate in the future, right? And that's why I was so immediate. Like, as soon as I finished my correspondence with Frog, I was like, this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go practice and learn to draw fish so that I can expand my universe, because it's a concept I hadn't even thought of before the conversation. The aquatic ecosystem is insane. And aquatic plants like algae are doing wonders for like carbon, and the ocean as a carbon sink is insane, and plants are doing so much work down there for our environment. They're providing entire homes for certain fish species the way that plants on Earth don't always do. Plants on land always do, right? That's something that is so fundamentally different compared to the aquatic ecosystems. Plants are homes for a lot of bugs on Earth, yes. However, it's not quite as expansive as the way that like individual coral species will home certain types of fish more abundantly, right? Plants on land are a little bit more about pollination. And when animals like kind of live and are drawn to them, it's more of a pollination component. This plant is trying to pollinate itself, while plants in the ocean always seem to appear a little bit more dedicated to providing shelter for a wider array of fish and aquatic life, aquatic bugs, sea spiders. I hate sea spiders. I hate them so much. And flatworms. They're adorable. Their breeding technique is absolutely absurd. Not a fan. Of course, there's a lot of plants on land that are homes to species, especially things like our redwoods. You know, they're not an angiosperm, they're not a flowering plant like you would think of when you think of land plants, but like redwoods are homes for so many different species. So many, like one branch of a old redwood can be, in a sense, its own little ecosystem. That's just how expansive and diverse the life can be up there in those upper tree levels, right? But that's kind of an aside. I just didn't think about how much more powerful an aquatic themed plant zombie can be, because they're now not only an ecosystem for plants, but they're an ecosystem for aquatic life beyond just those plants. Like the fish that theoretically live in those coral and things like that, which I think is another way to kind of go into that discussion I have about my zombies, in regards to them as a steward for life that they never got to complete, and kind of living beyond what they were permitted to do well on Earth. And also people die in water all the time. So, it's not like there's not enough possibilities for ways to be down there and reasons to be down there. I'm still on the fence if I want them to have a kind of mermaid form to them. I'm not a huge fan of mermaids personally, especially drawing wise. It's not something I really want to do, and I don't really want to get into drawing scales either. So I'm kind of on the fence on if I want to approach it more as something where they have legs, and I don't really think I want to modify the body that much. I don't want to imply that there is an evolutionary component that occurred once the person passed on, right? So I think I'm going to keep the legs, and you'll see a little bit more in a concept sketch I do under the fish on the next page that I pre-colored in advance for this sketching session, because I did want to approach thinking about color and how I would go about coloring fish. That's part of where everything kind of falls apart for me. Honestly, in terms of me and the way that I ended up trying to portray and convey my information, it gets really, really messy at the end. I swear I did my best. It just didn't turn out as you would hope. But that not meeting of my own expectations is something that I have learned over the years, particularly in my self-teaching more than since starting a college art education. But when I don't meet my expectations, that means that I'm already starting to conceptualize where I'm actively going wrong and seeing the limitations of what I'm doing and the skill set that I'm actively working with. And when I can tell that I can do better, and it's not bad, when it's not bad work, but I know that I can do better, if that makes sense, that's how I know that there is a skill set that I'm able to acquire out of this through more practice, right? It's something where when you don't feel like you're producing your best work, you generally know why you're not producing your best work. Or you at the very least know that there's something there that's tipping you off that just doesn't sit right with you. And that's why I have so much passion and love for creating quote-unquote bad art and having these sketchbook spreads and showing these sketchbook spreads where I don't feel personally super confident in the final product, or I don't feel particularly confident in the work that I've put out, because I know that this is me showing a point in a learning process that I can then return to later. Especially when it comes to producing videos and watching videos and creating a visual documentation of your work throughout the process. I'm now capable of going back and watching this and watching how I'm approaching and breaking down and conceptualizing the shapes in a way that I wouldn't be able to do if I came back to this a month later and all I had was my sketchbook. And that's something that I found very beneficial and cathartic about having a YouTube channel on top of everything. The comments are always super helpful. I receive so much good feedback from you guys, so many good thoughts, opinions, ideas, concepts. A lot of really good discussions come out of having a community as wonderful as you guys are. But additionally, it is a documentation of my own learning process that I have found to be very, very beneficial. Having to re-watch my video to edit it and then watch it again while I'm doing my voiceover is 3 more times that I'm experiencing the creation process, and it's been very helpful for me to actually see where my improvement is. And so when we return to maybe that front-on fish that I did first, the first full sketch I did on camera, you can kind of tell, and I can tell, maybe not you can tell, but I can tell that the issue that I was having distinguishing the face from that belly region that I was complaining about earlier is a lack of shading that can help articulate the difference in the frontal bit to the midsection of the body, right? or a lack of like distinguished maybe scales for some fish, or a pattern that gets overlapped, right? When things get cut off, when things don't continue onwards, we perceive that there is something in the way, something that is blocking our ability to perceive it, right? That's part of why the actual like way that parts of the body lay over each other are so important for us to feel like the anatomy looks right, right? Having hair that overlaps the face, the ear region, helps us to understand that this is supposed to be a three-dimensional realm, right? If the hair just followed along the top of the head and behind the ears, it would look super funky because that's not how hair sits. Hair sits up to the kind of, well, the hairline that's just above our forehead, right? And it falls over or around our face and it covers our ears if we're not bald. And it just looks really funny if things aren't overlapping, right? Our ears are going to cover parts of the side of our head, so we're not going to see the very like back bits of our skull because our ears are sticking out and they create that blocking, right? They have an overlap to them. Our fingers will overlap if we're looking at them from the side, and so if you draw all 5 fingers visible from a side view, it's going to look funky as hell, right? That overlap is very important. Same thing with clothes. The way it folds clothes over each other. Clothes fold around each other, sleeves might overlap the front bit, or your sleeve might get cut off by the side and how it tucks into the armpit region. All of that. How your necklace like kind of curves with the rest of the body. All of those differences in lines, all of those tiny minute details do wonders for actually articulating that there's something here happening that you generally will benefit from doing shading for, but it's like that first step. Does that make sense? Like having lines that kind of distinguish that there's a curvature happening there is helpful. I hope that makes sense because I feel like I just talked a lot with my hands to a blank wall. Because I did. But I hope that makes sense. But then with the shading, not having it, it just feels all very flat when it's not flat, right? The fish is supposed to be three-dimensional. It's supposed to be overlapping itself. The face is in front of the midsection, all of that. So not only do I not have the lines that kind of distinguish, while not necessarily harsh like a neck as I was mentioning and a shoulder line as I was mentioning earlier, there are no lines to try and distinguish that there's more of an overlap happening there and to kind of try and separate that face from the midsection, right? Then I don't have that shading that would help to distinguish that maybe that is in the back bit, right? It's darker than the front of the image, right? And you can think about this with stuff like plants. Plants have a bunch of leaves that overlap each other. And so if you reference a photo of a plant with leaves, right, and the leaves are all overlapping and you show that overlap, you're going to know that some of those leaves are in the background and some of them are in the foreground, right? They're overlapping each other, so one has to be over the other. Then if you add shading, it's going to be even more obvious that one's overlapping the other. You do not need both to necessarily convey your meaning, but the more steps you add, the more clear and concise the visualization of your concept will be. And that's just something that I really felt like I needed to work on with these fish, because I'm so accustomed to how light falls and hits the human body, but I don't know anything about fish. I don't know how light hits a fish. My fish are troughed fish. They're like troughed cleaning fish, so I don't look at them a whole lot. Like, I don't spend hours observing them. They're not like in the house where I can see them regularly. They're in the horse trough to clean the trough, so I only see them once or twice a day. And they're generally near the bottom where it's hard to see them at all, so they're not like in the direct sunlight near the surface where I can kind of perceive how the light hits them through the water, which is already doing kind of this refracting of light and making it even more difficult to kind of perceive that light information. But all of this is an incredibly drawn out way of trying to articulate all of the ways in which I'm noticing ways that I can already start to improve. on creating, drawing, and rendering fish, and I haven't even like had the opportunity to start a second spread if I want to, right? Briefly, before returning to the general topic of why this has been such a like interesting process for me and finding such a nice thing to work on, how the hell do you color fish? What color are fish? I googled so many photos of fish, and I didn't want to go with a basic yellow because it was not gonna look good on the gray overlay. Not gonna look good in like a like visually unappealing sense. Gray is a very nice neutral background that's highly pleasing to me personally, but I'd have to do a lot of layers, which I didn't want to do. And so I was like, oh, fish are brown sometimes, right? Brown fish exist. No, they don't. No, they don't. I've decided that brown fish don't exist. At least not brown like this. They're always like a lighter brown, a tanner brown, a more neutral brown. And I don't really have that. And so I kept trying to find a solution to how terribly I messed up with my color choices. I kept trying to think of something that would resolve the issue that is me making a horrible decision. Don't do what I did. When you think, oh yeah, this could be this color, don't do it. Don't do it. Find a reference of the color you're looking at. Don't be like me. Get a reference. Don't make my mistakes. Please. The orange was a much wiser choice. I know that Nemo's orange, right? Oh, at least I know it exists. It wasn't just a guess based on my perception of fish. But I think that I kind of needed to overall think before I put marker to paper, not just go with my first idea. But also not put down a gray background with the pens I was working with. I wasn't working with my Artix pens today, and I kind of already knew in the back of my head that these oil ones have a tendency to like reactivate acrylic paint pens for some reason and somehow and smear them and make them really difficult to work with. So using these oil ones on top of a Posca is a horrible idea because it just reactivates. They start blending and smudging together. It creates all of these issues that are really hard for me to work around, generally speaking, and I did it anyway, knowing that I shouldn't, which is like one of those situations where like you should know better, but my brain turned off, and so it just kept getting worse and worse and messier as I tried to layer colors to make the brown less of a mistake, and I kept trying to layer more orange on the orange fish to try and make him look less patchy and less sad and less like he had some sort of skin rash on him, like the fish equivalence of dry skin going on, and it was just not working. I brought in the white to try and brighten up the eyes to make them cute. It was like, well, maybe the color doesn't look great on them, but at least I can give them cutesy eyeballs and it'll be like not too bad. It was bad. I made a mistake and I should not have done this. And I was telling myself in my head if I layer enough shiny metallic paint down, it would start giving like rainbow fish energy. It would start serving that whole kids book that I liked when I was younger, Rainbow Fish. I don't know if people younger than me remember Rainbow Fish. I don't know if I was old for Rainbow Fish or young for Rainbow Fish when it was a slam hit of a kids book, okay? But I was like, oh, he'll look really iridescent and adorable, and he can give all of his metallic scales to his friends, and it will not be weird, and it'll look fine. It'll be thematic. It'll be nostalgic. It didn't work. It didn't. The metallic on the fish was not great. It just made the brown look even more off somehow, which you'd think like when you're casting a shadow using something metallic, the matte underneath would create like an appealing kind of difference in texture, but I think between the differences in the color, the difference in the texture, the material that would be existent for a metallic to a matte, it just became too much, all things considered. And so I think that might be a little bit where the main issue was. However, I just think that rendering fish in color is a little bit too uh advanced for me at this moment. I think I need to get more of the basic kind of bodies down for me personally. That's generally how I have to approach learning information is I have to do the baseline, I have to understand the skeleton of something, how it sits, how the proportions exist in relation to each other, and then I can kind of go through the process of saying, okay, here's now how that shape, these proportions, these overlappings relate to changes in color, how the colors might be impacted by each other. And I don't think that's something that I grasped. I don't think I spent enough time with the body of a fish with that one page for me to achieve confidence in coloring, and I think that was where my mistake really came. Because when I think about it, when I taught myself human anatomy when I was younger and I went about learning human anatomy so that I could draw characters, I didn't color my illustrations for years, honestly. I think some of my first fully colored drawings of humans were done multiple years after I started. And I know that I'm a slow learner, and I know that I take a lot of time to fully grasp a concept, that it takes me a lot more effort than my peers generally to actually catch on to what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I should have known from that alone that I was going to need to do a lot more work with just the basic pencil sketches to be able to then render it the way I would want to, right? And that's just kind of a fault on my part. I really did need to spend a lot more time with the basic shape and kind of understanding and breaking down these things on a conceptual level before I moved to color, which is still an area that I'm not super confident in. I've been told by peers that I have a good eye for color, but I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think that I just play it very safe with color and it generally tends to work out for me. And I push things until they work. And that wasn't something I really felt like doing with these fish. This was supposed to be a fun, simple practice time. So the solution I go for and find for these fish just not working with me color wise is the cheap cop out, kind of not great option, to be honest, but I like the spread a lot more because of it, and I think that's what matters. And I don't really feel personally bad about tapping out when I start to get frustrated and then returning to it later when I have a fresh mind. I did that with homework all throughout my education, before, now, high school, college, all of that. When I start to get frustrated, it's tap out time. I take a long break, I come back to it. I generally work on other topics in between. I come back to it with a fresh mind a day later. And I always do things in advance with a lot more time than necessary before deadline, because I know that I have this kind of need to step away and that I get frustrated easily and I need to spend sometimes multiple days with a singular topic. And that's what I'm going to do with these fish. I'm going to continue to practice them and draw them on other papers that probably won't end up in my physical sketchbook or taped in the back somewhere along the lines. But for today's purpose, for this spread, it was tap out. I could not do it anymore. I decided that the other side of the spread was a little bit bland, and so in my frustrations and in me producing a large amount of wet white paint on the other page, I decided to take one of my dry blue pens and just scribble out a bit of color to add a little bit of pizzazz around the fish to make them feel a little bit more immersed in the environment. I was optimistic that in making this decision that I might think of a solution for the brown pen on the other side that was just really not working with me, that adding that splash of color would make me feel more inspired and in the mood to start working on something a little bit more colorful and kind of creative in the overall kind of scheme of the spread. But I realized basically all the way through that I sat down to sketch fish for the sake of a bigger purpose, for the sake of a bigger drawing, and that I don't think I really was in the mood to even be coloring in the first place. I don't really think that rendering was what I felt like doing when I sat down, and that was why partially me not having good references and me knowing nothing about fish. Secondly, I think a large part of it was that it wasn't what I was craving to do artistically. And generally, if I don't have the intense desire in that moment to be doing that thing, I step away or I do something else artistically. Because I think one of the worst things that I can do for myself, and I think this might apply to a lot of artists, I don't want to speak or generalize for artists, but one of the worst things I can do for myself as an artist is push me to create things that I'm really just not in the mood to create. Push me to create when I'm not feeling creative. Push myself to create something I don't want or like or care about and things like that. And that's a big part of the reason why I kind of oddly want to go into teaching beginner art courses, because it's so hard to learn the basics and understand the basics of art when you hate what you're doing, when you don't like the topic, and when it's generalized and standardized for one particular type of learner. It just draws away so many other groups and types of people. And I don't agree with that. I think that there are ways to diversify your beginner art course and your beginner art education in a way that will capture and entice a larger demographic of people. You know, almost everybody has to take an art class in university, right? There's very few classes you can take in the general education section for the arts that aren't art. It's art, music, art history, and so a lot of people choose that basic art course, you know, that beginner art course that introduces you to those introductory concepts. And I believe that there is a space for art in everybody's lives, and that there is a space for art in every single person's kind of way of thinking and processing information. I don't think everyone's going to be good at it. I don't think everybody is skilled at it. I don't think everybody is going to be an artist per se, but I think learning how to utilize your more creative side of your mind will aid you in problem solving. If you stick to one side of the aisle too much, I think that it kind of limits you in the way that you can approach and process and challenge information and problems when they arise in life. And I've come to that philosophy and that opinion and that belief through being a scientist before I became an artist. And I found that when I was struggling in my science classes before I really started loving art and taking art passionately when I was in my teen years, I really didn't have the creative problem solving I do now that I do have a passion for art, and now that I do pursue it and take it a bit more seriously, right? And I feel that way about artists as well. I think that at least challenging yourself and pushing yourself to pursue some form of that more analytical thinking is equally as important for being able to perform problem solving and find solutions for things in life. And that's kind of just something that makes me really passionate about particularly teaching beginner art, because, you know, almost everybody's going to come that way. All walks of life are going to touch that class, have that class. And so if I can provide even something simple that will be beneficial for a non-art major in their future, that's major for me, because I've impacted someone's life who will never actually do art again, maybe. And I don't know. That's something that I find very cathartic and important about art classes, right? So there's that. So my less than creative problem solving was to take a piece of scrap paper and cover my accidents and all of my unhappy problems in life. And so I found the dorkiest fish I could find in my quick scrolls of Google searching fish on the internet, and I tried to draw it, and it went horribly. Hi, I can't draw fish still. One spread is not gonna make you an expert. I'm just saying. I have, almost 10 sketchbooks of drawing people, and I'm still not great at it. Imagine fish, guys. Wild. And, so I tried to draw the goofy fish with basic line art, no sketch, just kind of vibing it out, trying to kind of get it in a more impression-based way, just basic lines, not really thinking about the shading, just get down the basic shape. I kind of love him on the basis of being a goober, a little goober boy, a goober baby. I hate him in every other capacity physically possible. It made me feel like a literal failure. So I flipped him over and I started again with something a lot more conceptually simple for me, which is a manta ray. Manta ray? Stingray? Manta ray. A ray. A species of ray. Can you tell that I did not commit and finish my marine biology degree and I chose botany instead? Yeah, I kind of thought it was obvious. But the ray was a lot easier because he had a lot less, I don't want to say a lot less goofy to him, because he's still a goofy boy. He's got a goofy shape, but I guess there was less weird things overlapping that felt abnormal. Where I felt like I needed translucency and shading and stuff like that to kind of try and convey my information the way that I wanted to. There was just something about the ray that just came across a little bit more simple to me personally, and that's what I needed, all things considered, to rebuild my confidence after this entire experience. And so, he's looking pretty good. He's a cute little guy, and I had more space, and I didn't want it to feel like I wasn't utilizing it, and I was just trying to cover it non-committally. So I did find another goofy fish that I could draw some little goofy line art of to kind of continue the theme, kind of maintain that appearance that I was looking for. And I found the dorkiest guy. He has the longest fish nose and the most, defined fish lips I've ever seen. It's wild. I have no idea what this fish is. I have no idea evolutionarily why this fish looks like this. This fish just looks like a bad kids drawing meme, and I love it for that. I love the fact that this guy exists, and he lives his best ugly fish life. Cute fish life. Goober life? I don't even know what this guy's got going on, but I love it. And, as scary of a place as the ocean may be, this little guy makes the concept of the terrifying ocean a lot more worth it. And I think it's kind of clear, actually, sitting here and experiencing it and seeing it, that I am a lot more confident when I'm going in with a basic pen. And I do kind of produce better, simple work when I have these basic pens, basic line art, and that's kind of my way of conveying the information. I think when I know that there are no takesies backsies with my drawings, that I have a lot more confidence in my intuitive state, and that is another major step for me practicing and learning to draw fish, is to go in with just pen. I think that that'll be very important for me making substantial and notable progress in the future, because while my first one was not great, I think all my other ones did a really good job of capturing the basic essence of the fish that I was trying to convey, and that will be beneficial for me in just preparing for my character designs that I want to have those kind of fish involved in, right? I'm doing this for an illustration. I'm practicing for an illustration where the fish are not going to be the focus. They just need to look good enough that it doesn't detract from the drawing, right? And I wish I would have just kind of thought about it this way sooner and gone back to my roots, which is ink drawing, right? While most of my art is sketched out in pencil first, inking is my artistic kind of home, is where I'm my most confident, and I should have known to just do that from the very beginning, right? With all of this being said, though, I really, really hope that if you were creative alongside me, that my kind of struggle points and my approach to finishing the spread was either inspirational, created some form of encouragement to not give up, did something ultimately at the end that allowed you to also see through your project. Whether you loved it or hated it, I hope that you got something out of the experience and you remember that failure as an artist is just as important as success as an artist, because failure is how we learn to grow, right? And so I really appreciate you sitting all the way through to the end of this video. It really does mean the world to me when people take the time out of their day to kind of sit through my content and hang out with me once a week. So if you stuck through to the end, you listened to my ramblings, my philosophical commentary, I really, really appreciate it. If you liked this video, like it, dislike. If you disliked it, subscribe if you would like to see more of my content. I do all sorts of random weird drawing stuff here, from OCs to fan art to whatever this is. And I'll have pictures hopefully at the end that you can look at of up close maybe, so hopefully that will be there. And with all of that being said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, wherever you are on this planet. And with that being said, bye bye.